Welcome to the Freedom Club Podcast, where we discover the fight for freedom, fulfillment, passion, and purpose. Your host is Curt, Gallup certified strengths coach, an agency founder who is dedicated to coaching individuals seeking to level up their life and their businesses. The Freedom Club is about unlocking your talents, turning them into strengths, and crushing your objectives. You can learn more at curtmercadante.com. Welcome to the Freedom Club.
This is the Freedom Club Podcast. I'm your host, Curt Mercadante. It is Thursday, May 31st, which means it's time for the Thursday interview segment. Every Thursday, I interview a business leader or some other all-around interesting person. Every Monday is the Monday Motivator segment, in which I bring you a short burst of motivation to help you kick your week off on the right foot. And for today's interview segment, I have a fun and fascinating interview with Roger Wilkerson. He has a career that has spanned from radio to comedy writing to business consulting to improv and more comedy, and now to sales and marketing training. He owns a company called Ygetarts. It's actually strategy backwards. He is now based in Thailand. Friends, his career has brought him from Columbis, Ohio to LA to Philadelphia to Hawaii to Saudi Arabia and now to Thailand, where he works as an expat. And so we talk about all of this and more, including his war against cold call sales, on today's edition of the Freedom Club Podcast. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Thank you. All right, so we are here with Roger Wilkerson, coming all the way from Bangkok, Thailand. He's with Ygetarts, which is strategy backwards. Roger, thanks so much for being on the Freedom Club Podcast.
Well, thank you for having the courage to have me on as a guest. As we know, some shows have me banned, so I appreciate your courage.
the Unlearn podcast and LinkedIn show. I know you've been banished from there. So
right. We're working on it. We're negotiating as we speak. But this is a podcast, right?
Yes, sir.
Let me make sure my breath is fine. Okay.
Yeah,
now we're good to go.
Before we got on, you made a remark that I had a face for radio. So thank you for that.
I did not say that. I said you looked like a great radio guy. Curt cannot take compliments. That's the next podcast.
So we did a video chat, but maybe about a month ago, and I was just fascinated by your background, which includes acting, coaching, comedy, radio, podcasts, moving further and further east, taking you to where you are now in Bangkok. As the people listening can tell, you are not Thai by birth. You are from the U.S. So fascinating.
Put Thai my die. Which is
what does that mean?
I can't speak Thai.
Oh, got it. Can you speak? You cannot speak Thai.
No, a little bit.
Okay.
Very little. I can speak a little Thai. I can speak a little Thai and a little Arabic because I also lived in Saudi Arabia for a couple of years. And I can speak just enough of those two languages to get them to speak English.
Interesting. So in Bangkok, is English pretty commonly spoken? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm down by the beach, so I'm a little further away from the city, so it's even more. It's even more.
So, Roger, I want to get into your bio and kind of what took you to where you are now, your journey to Bangkok, right?
Sure.
One Night in Bangkok, which is one of my favorite shows or songs. But first question I always ask all my guests is, what does the word freedom mean to you? I'd like to know what it means to you.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So, I grew up in Columbis, Ohio, and I felt trapped as a kid. And so I just wanted to get out. And so to me, freedom is just the ability to get up and go anywhere and make it happen. And I've done that a couple of times. I've done it in Los Angeles. I've done it in Hawaii. I've done it in Saudi Arabia. I've done it in Thailand. And so it's been since I was a little kid. So freedom is really important to me.
And why, you said you feel trapped. Why did you feel trapped?
I just had one of those weird kind of household situations where, I didn't feel a part of I had a brother that was died before I was born. So it was like two different families and there was just a lot of stuff going on. And Ohio is a great place to be from. And the key word is from. I mean, I loved it growing up, but I had to get out of there.
It's funny you say that because so I live in Charleston, South Carolina, not
Great
from here
city.
originally. And there's actually bumper stickers here that say, go back to Ohio, because there's such an influx of people from Ohio. I mean, you'll go to a farmer's market and it's all either Ohio State sweatshirts everywhere or Pittsburgh Steelers, because a lot of people from that part of Ohio, of course.
Exactly.
Yeah, fascinating. So you escape from Columbus, Ohio.
I went to a special radio and TV school in high school, and that saved my life.
Okay.
I directed cable TV shows when I was 16. I won the Ohio Film Festival when I was 17, then went to Ohio University, great school, one of the top 10 journalism schools in the world at the time, but also ranked in the top 10 of Playboy party schools. And that was really why I went. And Athens, Ohio it was fantastic. And that was far enough away from Columbus to get a taste of what that was like. And then, came towards graduation, and I knew two people in LA, and they said, come here. And I got in a car with $345 and my records and my clothes, and I drove from Columbus, Ohio to Los Angeles, and then started a business about a month after I got there, writing comedy for radio stations using email in 1984 when nobody knew what that was. And then and then everything kind of blew up from there.
So when you have $345, you say, I'm leaving Ohio and I'm going to LA.
Yeah.
What did your family and friends say at that point?
Well, they knew, my friends knew how crazy I was, because I did all kinds of crazy stuff. And so there was no surprise there. And my parents knew that, like, they couldn't stop me from doing anything. And so, I think everybody kind of thought I was going to come back, but that just didn't happen.
Yeah. So you're in LA. How long were you in LA for doing the comedy writing?
I was in LA maybe a month and a half, and I got a new apartment, and I got a room in a house of one of the guys that I knew, his brother. He'd worked in the record store I'd worked at. And next door to that was the guy who was a screenwriter, and he was writing the film Colors. And so all the people that were in that film were at the house at a party, and we were all having fun. But there was a guy that had been doing an MBA at UCLA, and he told me about email. And I spent more time talking to him about that. And then I connected the dots that if I got a computer, I could write the comedy and I could send it. And that's how it all happened.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. So how long did that last before? Did you go right from that into radio, or was what happened?
So all of the clients were radio stations, right? So
Yeah.
I was doing radio before. I was doing radio in Parkersburg, West Virginia. I'd gotten a lot of attention. My name was Roger Wilco on the rock station, and Roger West on the AM country station. And I would,
which is still your Instagram. Roger Wilco is your Instagram.
Roger Wilco is how everybody knows me. But I would do on the rock station, I was Roger Wilco, and then I would do a fake voice on the country station, and I was Roger West, and up next and I would do that. And so that was fun. And I had declared myself the official disc jockey of the 1984 Summer Olympics, because that was the first time of sponsorships. And what happened was that blew into a national thing because the Olympic Committee threatened to sue me. And so I didn't back down, and then they backed down. So
yeah,
I'd gotten a lot of attention from that. So
they realized they weren't going to get millions out of you, millions in damages.
No, and I wasn't going to stop saying that I was the official disc jockey of the 1984 Summer Olympics. And so where were they going to? They were just going to be a big company picking on a kid in Parkersburg, by God, West Virginia, as we used to say.
How did that I would call it a shtick, but how did that campaign work out for you? Did it help your?
It was great. I mean, I got national coverage. I got 4 or 5 job offers, but then I knew that I wanted to go to LA. I'd been in LA before once on a family trip, and I knew I just wanted to go there, and because there was no winter, and that was a fantastic, at 21, the idea of no winter was just fantastic to me. And so I was there, and that was it.
Yeah. Coming from Illinois, one of the reasons we moved here was the idea of no winter. And then I think this past
Sure.
year, it never snows there. We had 6 inches of
Oh,
snow.
you got
Like,
one.
what did you tell
one?
people? Yeah. Why did you, I thought there was no snow here, and everyone's, it's so magical. I'm like, no, it's not. I had 38 years of snow. So,
Right. So how I got into radio was I started the business. I was working at a record store. I got a computer at Radio Shack. I started the business, and I had maybe 10 of the top 20 radio stations paying me $50 a week. I thought I'd pulled off the biggest scam of the century. And that was more money than I was making at the record store, and then another 10. And then, so I quit the record store, but all of them were top stations. And one was this big radio station in Philly called WMMR. And so I was an original millennial. I was a remote worker, from LA to Philly for 2 years. And then they were number one in a highly competitive situation, and they didn't want me to be working with anybody else. So they made me an offer to come work there.
and you went out there full time.
Yeah, I went to Philly full time and I'd forgotten about winter. So I left in October, and I had a guaranteed contract. So I was trying to get fired in the first couple months, because then they'd have to pay me out for the year and I could go back to LA. So I negotiated my contract with a megaphone and did all kinds of stuff to try to get fired, but it didn't. And I stayed there for 3 years. So that was fun.
That's funny. You know, when you talk about the Olympics gambit that you did and that I had an article today on LinkedIn called "Don't Be Afraid to Piss People Off."
Yeah, I saw that. That was great.
And, you know, most of the people got it and they read the article. Of course, the one guy to which I responded, like I said in my article, I'm an acquired taste. But
right.
he started, you know, he took it the wrong way about, read Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And you're just looking to piss people off on purpose. As if you actually read the article, I talk about being yourself, be yourself. And if some people don't like that, you know.
Well, you know, Dale Carnegie pissed off a lot of people. And,
yeah, right.
and the one that cracks me up is the Napoleon Hill one, right? Everybody talks about Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich and blah, blah, blah. But he died broke. And he was not rich. The publishing companies the only reason that book became popular was because in the 80s, there were so many people that got rich and they didn't know how to tell their friends that they weren't going to lend them money. So they would start to hand out that book. They go, oh, here, if you just think and grow, you'll get rich. Like, that's not the way it works.
That's funny. Yeah, it's not about walking into a room and picking a fight. It's about don't be afraid to be yourself. And, you know,
well, you're right. I mean, you're right.
There's people who hate Apple. There are people who despise Apple. But you know what? Apple's fine with that because they have an army of people that will pay $1,000 for a phone and wait in the rain to get it.
Right. And when I used to coach actors, we used to have this conversation. I used to say, look, you have to remember that, you know, no matter how good you are, I don't care, at the top of your game, there are going to be people that like you and there are going to be people that hate you. But most are going to be in the middle. Most are going to be quite neutral. And that's the thing that I think everybody, especially some LinkedIn creators that get upset when people kind of attack them, they have to understand is that, like, once you put yourself out there, once you become a public figure, and once you do that, you're going to get attacked, and you just have to decide how to handle it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
people who react to that by kind of curling back and becoming vanilla in their content, then the trolls have won, correct? I mean,
that's correct. That's right. I mean, the thing with the trolls that are interesting on LinkedIn in particular versus trolls like on Twitter, where it's just a bar fight, right? Where it's fun. It's like, come on, like, okay, great, game on. I'll punch you too. And it's acceptable, right? Or even Facebook, where it's, you know, whatever that kind of antagonism is on Facebook. The LinkedIn thing is interesting because it's all second and third connections that, you know, obviously because one of your friends likes it, it shows up in their feed, and whatever you're saying or doing is so against what they believe that their cognitive dissonance kicks in. They can't hold the conflicting thought and they got to attack it.
Right.
And it's not, most of them aren't sick. It's just that you've just said something that just hurts their head that they have no impulse control. and then they can match it. So
I love it when they don't actually watch your video or read your article.
that's the best.
They start laying into you based on the first sentence or the second sentence.
Absolutely. It's the best.
Yeah. So you're in Philly.
Yes.
How long did that last before you got fired?
Well, I didn't get fired.
No, I know.
Really
I'm kidding.
It was really funny. It was close though. I said to myself, I wanted to do it 2 years, and I did it for 2 years. We were in a highly competitive situation. So we were up against Howard Stern. And every time I was producing the show, we were number one, and Howard couldn't beat us, and Howard would try to mess with us on our show, and I would screw Howard up on his show. And years before, one of the people that worked at NBC that was one of my, what would you call them, guardian radio angels, had set up where maybe I would write for Howard, right? But we never got that meeting because Howard got fired. So I knew this personality. And so anyway, so we were always number one. And then I said I'll do it for 2 years, and then 2 years came, and I didn't really want to do it the third year. You know, it's a grind. You get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. You read 20 papers or however many papers there are that you can get a hold of. And then you write 150 jokes for that day, and then you start to produce the show. And then after the show gets off, you book all the guests and all that stuff. It's a grind. And then you have to take a nap in the afternoon, and then you have to go out at night to the concerts and all that stuff. Right. So it's not necessarily a fun lifestyle. And so I said, I'll do it one more year. And I'm glad I did, because that last year, because I didn't want to be there, I did bigger things. So like we did all of the Tyson fights from the Trump Plaza, because Trump's right-hand man was my best friend, Mark Edis. Mark was the guy who died in the helicopter crash, right? Okay. So we would do all the Tyson fights, and we were a rock station, we weren't a sports station. And so we just had some great shows, and we would do shows from Jamaica, we would do shows from UK, all over. So it was fun.
That was cool. So how did it end?
I left because I got hired to run 5 radio networks in Los Angeles. I became the youngest network executive for 5 comedy radio networks, and they wanted to produce a live call-in comedy show. So I had this was right before all the comics were starting to pop. So I had like Seinfeld and all those people were all on my show and all that. So I'd already had them on shows before. And then fortunately for me, the radio station lost the first time that I was gone. So then I became the boy wonder of radio, and then a lot of people would hire me to consult them, and I did that for a couple of years. And then
freelance basis.
Yeah. And then radio kind of got killed with consolidation. And so then I decided, well, you know what? Let me change course here. I'd always negotiated all the deals for the companies, right? So however many mentions they were going to get, that went through me. So I flipped it and started to do that for companies. So I started to do that for film companies and TV networks and music companies. And I was the only guy that really knew about the internet at that time. So I got into a lot of that. And so, there was one time I was consulting for Disney Records for the new Mickey Mouse Club. And I was also working the new Chronic record with Dr. Dre over at, so it was a real diverse, it was great. It was good times.
It's interesting because, and we're not even up close to where you're at today, but there's been a lot of pivots in your career.
Sure.
Where it changed sometime by external reasons. Yeah. It changed, the industry changed, and you didn't sit there and say, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Woe is me and crawl in a hole.
Oh no.
You changed your life around. You pivoted and you moved on.
Yeah. If you can see the storm coming, you better get into a safe place.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't do that. I think a lot of people think they see the storm coming and they get too afraid to make the change. And then they find themselves in a worse situation. And, but great. Thank God there's people like you that can help get them out.
Yeah. What doesn't frustrate me, it frustrates me because I don't like to see people suffering, but like you said, they see the storm coming. They don't take action to even avoid it.
That's
and
right.
When it hits, they say, oh my gosh, my luck is so bad.
Yeah. Well, look, it's easy to be a victim, right? And sometimes you actually are a victim. There are actually circumstances where you are actually a victim, and you have to feel that, and you have to go through that. But it's misery loves company, right? So if I say, oh, the problem's outside of me, there's going to be a lot more people that are going to hang out with me and drink with me and eat with me and say, yes, you're right. It's them. It's not, it's them, not us.
Right.
But at some point in time, and, it happens for all of us at different times, you have to realize, look, I'm ultimately responsible for my path, and I got to make the tough decisions. And if they're wrong, that's okay. I'm going to learn from them and move through it, but I'm not going to stay stagnant.
Right. Right. And it's a tough message sometimes, especially, I get
really hard
messaging me on LinkedIn, or I do a message about excuses and victim mentality. And I'm talking about a certain type of person.
Right.
Invariably, I get messages from people who, were struck by lightning in the form of cancer or something like that. It's like, listen,
right.
I'm talking about some different things here, right? Everything's not a one size fits all.
That's right.
And so how long were you in this business for?
I did that. I did that for a couple of years, and then I had a tragedy. I had a 19-year-old nephew who was like a son to me, and he died. And actually, my company that I had was in the process of getting ready to go public, and we were doing all that stuff, and that happened, and I just knew I wasn't going to be able to heal in Los Angeles. And so I decided that I'd been going to Hawaii on vacation. So I decided, let me go there and I'll heal this. And I was only planning to be there a year. There was an actor strike going on and a writer strike going on, which I also did on the side. And then 9/11 hit, and I didn't want to go back to the States. I grew up in a military family. I knew what was kind of going to happen. And, so I wanted to stay in Hawaii and just make it happen. And that's how I started doing the improv, which was very healing for the nephew grief and all that stuff. And then it took about 8 years, but I healed most all that stuff.
And you were in Hawaii for 8 years?
Yeah, it was fantastic.
Wow. And not only doing improv, but coaching?
Coaching, yeah. So what happened was my best mentor was a guy named Jack. He's still around, but his name's Jack Burns, and Burns and Carlin, Burns and Schreiber. If you're older, you'll know who he was. He was just a genius comic, but he was also one of the original Second City members, and he really trained me in improv. Wow. And so when I went to Hawaii, he says, "Is there anything you missed from LA?" And I said, "The improv classes was, I missed that." And he goes, "You should teach it." And I said, "Are you drinking? I mean, are you crazy?" And so I did it, and I started teaching some free improv class in the park outside, which was great because a lot of that exploratory stuff that you have to do in acting class, you could actually do it with the real elements around, so that was good. Wow. And there was a Tai Chi class over across from us, so we were picking fights with them, and and so we did it in Kapiolani Park, and I was only going to do it for 6 weeks or 8 weeks, something like that. And everybody started coming, and it was a donation only thing. Right. So, and I didn't care if anybody paid me or not. But what would happen is I would get people that would pay me. And one of my students was I didn't know it at the time, but she was the vice president of sales for Pfizer. Interesting. And she said, "Look, Roger, I would really like you to bring this in and train my sales staff." And so my first sales training was Pfizer, which, that's, you start at the bottom and then you kind of go down, and, you can only go up. No, it was just, that was what happened. Right. Yeah. That kind of stuff. Right. And the acting coaches, not the acting coaches, the casting directors, there was only 3 in Hawaii. They'd seen a big difference in the people. They wanted to have lunch with me, and they wanted to get me to commit to coaching full time. And so I did that. And then that was right at the time that we got Lost and a bunch of other shows came in. And so, yeah, that's how that happened.
So you decide you're going to do improv in the park.
Right.
What is it like going into a park for the first time with no one else around? Do you just start acting? Do you just start grabbing people and saying, "Do you want to do some improv?"
No. they'd all come. They'd all, I'd put out an ad, and
Okay, got it.
so there was 4 or 5 people that were going to meet, and we met. And I didn't know them. They didn't know me, but they all seemed to like it because every week more people would come because they would invite their friends. And improv is a very interesting thing because it's inclusive. It's not a hierarchical thing, right? So even when you're the director, you're in with the actors, right? You're side coaching. It's not an authoritarian thing. It's a group dynamic thing. That's why I use it with all my sales trainings that I do now.
Yeah. So someone who's in sales or business or in any, if they're alive, right,
Yeah.
can benefit from improv training. What's kind of the 30, 60 second reasoning behind that?
Well, so if you go back, so Viola Spolin created the games, right? And the games were designed to help disruptive children interact with each other, right? So it's all about agreement. It's about, there's about 7 aspects of spontaneity that she has that you got to go through. One of the major ones is, a lot of people know about, it's called yes and, meaning that I'm going to agree with stuff. So, the instinct of people is to say no, right? But with yes and, what you learn is to say yes, so the person feels validated, right? And then you take it to the next level, right? So instead of disagreeing with it right out of the box, you say yes, that person feels heard, and then you give your other point of view. Interesting. Right? So it sounds like it's a people-pleasing thing, but it's actually the opposite. It's okay, we'll get through what you have to say now. I'm going to have to say something, and then let's decide what we're going to do. Yeah. Because by the time you get around the circle, the idea from the first person may have changed without anyone having to say no, right? Correct. And there's an agreement that the group is more important than any one individual. So if somebody starts to get too big in the group, in the acting group, to go for their narcissistic fix, you come around and you take them down, right? So same thing in business, where people are, they want to take credit for everything when it's going well, and they want to blame everybody else when it's not going so well, right? So when you got to cut that out. When you go into a corporate office and you do these trainings, I imagine there are those who are skeptical or outright, have some pushback. Or did it go pretty well? No, because I'll tell you, all my clients come from referral, or they've had a direct experience in an event, right? Okay. So like I did an event a couple years ago, and one of the clients that I have now came up to me after that event and said, this is the first time, I've done a lot of these. He goes, but this is the first time where somebody connected marketing and sales together, and actually said, marketing has to be quantified. You have to quantify it. You can't just say, oh, well, that's, you have to put a number on it. You have to find a way to quantify it. And that direct experience that he had is what made him want to become a client. Interesting. Yeah. So did you go directly from Hawaii to Saudi Arabia? No, I went from Hawaii back to LA. Okay. And started a little tutoring company. I was helping kids with ADD, ADHD, and turning them around. So they were like D students, F students, and I would get them to A, B students in 60 days, 90 days max. Without pharmaceuticals? No pharmaceuticals at all. And so, and I used a lot of the improv on that. And I did that for a while, a year. I was booked up solid. And then I got a call from somebody that asked if I worked with international students. And I said, do they speak English? And he said, yeah. And I said, okay. And so I met the mother and the kid the next day at a hotel in Los Angeles. And they wanted me to come work in Saudi Arabia for a couple of years full-time with the kid. And I did that. He was I didn't know it at the time, but he was the grandson of the Crown Prince at the time. Oh, wow. So I did that for a couple of years there. That's how I got to Thailand. I would come back and forth. When I wasn't working, I'd come here. And then I did back and forth between LA and here. And then I wanted to go for Alzheimer's prevention. I wanted to go get my MBA, finance. I wanted to be the first one of the few with MBA finance and comedy writer on their CV. And so,
I know a lot of MBAs who could use a little comedy in their life.
well, it's great because the finance people can't mess with me and the creative people can't mess with me. So I'm like a translator for both. So.
Wow. So you're in Bangkok now. What's your day look like? What do you spend your time doing?
I'm by the beach, not in Bangkok, right? So I get up, I take a motorbike taxi, which is always exciting. And I go to my Starbucks and I sit there and I read and I work on client stuff and take calls. And then that's what I do when I'm here, and then travel.
How many clients do you have generally right around now?
Typically I run about 16 to 20.
Okay.
I like to keep it like that. And some clients are on and off. Some will be on for a couple months. Some will be off for a couple months. So we do hourly stuff for some of them. We do project stuff for some of them. We do monthly stuff for others.
And it's a mix of sales training and...
We basically do 4 things, right? So we do consulting, right? We do analysis, especially on the intangible side. So because of my background, I can actually put the dollar value. So if somebody's like doing an M&A or they're looking at buying a company or an investment, they'll hire us to do the analysis. And training and strategy.
Okay.
So those are the 4 things that we typically do.
So a lot of my clients are looking to become entrepreneurs, or they're entrepreneurs who are feeling trapped, right? And they don't set boundaries for themselves. And so they feel like they're in a prison instead of a business.
Sure.
You are an entrepreneur in a completely different country from where you're originally from. What are some of the challenges? What are some of the benefits?
Well, I think one of the things that you learn when you live out of the U.S., I mean, I go back to the U.S., but I'm out of the U.S. more than I'm in the U.S., right? I think one of the things when you learn when you're out of the U.S. is that it's a big world, right? And that that things are done quite differently everywhere else than are done in America. And so in Asian countries in particular, it's all collectivist, right? It's all group, dynamic. So you have to build relationships. You can't do business with anybody in Asia unless you know somebody, right? It's not your accomplishments. You could come in and say, "Oh, I did this, this, and this." Nobody cares. Doesn't matter. You could be a person that really has no education, but you're related to a person who's in charge, who's a big mucky muck, and you're good to go. So it's a different society, and that's not only that's quite common in Asia and the Middle East as well, and parts of Europe are quite collectivist. You
have plans? Well, maybe not plans, but you come back to the States to live, or at some point.
I would not say no, but right now most of the work that I'm doing is trying to help companies based in Asia that want to do well in the U.S. or companies in the U.S. that want to break into Asia. So I think it's important to kind of be in the country.
And is the culture there such? I mean, you mentioned where you're near the beach, so I assume a lot of tourists,
right?
Where you don't stick out like a sore thumb, or
there's so many expats. There's so many expats, really? And Thailand in particular is a really friendly country, right? So they like the expats. They don't, as long as you just respect the ties, you're good to go. Interesting.
Yeah. So one of the things on LinkedIn that you've caused a stir is you're in this competition, and it's kind of the battle between those who worship at the altar of cold call sales, yes, and you who says, no, I'm not going to worship at the altar. In fact, it's bad, and it's bad for your health, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people. I have clients who, they're number one, they want to start their business, but they're terrified of sales.
Sure.
And I tell them, well, the good news is a lot of people are terrified by sales. The other good news is there's a lot of people who can help you.
Correct.
So tell me a little bit about the no cold calling and what that means for people who, when they hear sales, all they think is dialing for dollars or emailing for dollars.
Right. So I had started a series called So You Hate Sales, totally targeted at business owners that don't really like sales, but have to do it in their business, right? And so gave them some strategy. It was just a very simple thing, right? 3 or 4. And there was one day where I didn't have any content to post. And so I thought I had mentioned this on somebody's post. I commented that, I haven't done cold calls in decades. It's a waste of time kind of thing. And I didn't get any pushback on that. So I thought I'll do it as a video. And so the video was, that cold calling should be killed. Not that it was dead. I mean, look, cold calling does work in certain industries and certain situations. So nobody was saying it doesn't work. And all of a sudden I started getting harassed by some of these church of cold calling people, authors, I mean, famous. And I'm thinking, why are you even worried about what I do? Right. And, but they were so visceral. And of course I pushed back, and then I challenged them. I said, fine, well, I'll pick any company anywhere. You get 16 people, I get 16 people. We'll put our teams against it. My team can't cold call, yours can, and we'll see who wins. And one of them said yes, and hopefully we will do that challenge. Hopefully he doesn't back out. But the other one just backed down like a giant chicken. And because they're just about going out and talking to people and selling their books and standing in front of a crowd and saying, this is the way to do it. But everybody that does any kind of training knows there is no one sales system. There's just, everything is bespoke. Everything is built to fit. So,
yeah. And so, not only built to fit the type of customer you're pitching, but also built to fit the type of person you are. Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, round peg, square hole,
that's right.
Just dialing up and cold calling doesn't fit.
So, but I got attacked so much that I thought to myself, okay, well, what if I'm wrong? Because that's what I do with my clients. So what if we're wrong about this strategy, right? So, what if I was wrong? So that's why I did the survey and let it run for a couple months. And then we just announced it. And much to my surprise, the data came back quite different. I mean, it was 100% no against cold calling on the consumer side. Now, even 5 years ago, you wouldn't have seen that. You would have seen sales professionals that would have said, hell, they're just doing their job. It's no big deal. I can get rid of it anytime. Or you'd have elderly people that are lonely or whatever, and they just want to talk, right? But it was 100% against cold call. That says a lot, right? That's a big net. That's 100 is a big number. So what I thought was going to happen was I thought that 70% of the salespeople were going to say that they liked cold calling as a tactic, and 30% were going to say no. But it was the other way around. So 70%, it was 69%. So we say 7 out of 10 sales professionals also agree with the consumers. And if you think about it, it makes sense, right? Because it is an antisocial behavior, right? And if as a consumer you don't want to, and some of them said this, if I'm a consumer and I don't want to cold call, why do I want to make one, right?
Right.
And how is that going to, and they're right, about that. The other 30%, no. I mean, they don't care. And they don't care about other people's feelings. They don't care that it's antisocial. All they care about is making the money. They have zero care about anything else beyond that, right? And so that's attribution error, right? That's that thing of, I can do this. I can do this behavior because it gets me something, even though it's a bad behavior, right? And so, but they wouldn't make those calls at all if they weren't making the money. Nothing wrong with making money, by the way, but there's so many other ways to do it now. And a cold call is just, and with millennials, you can't even get them on the phone long enough to talk about anything.
Right.
So
let's say you're going to do this competition, right? And you have your 16,
sure.
Your team of 16, and you have XYZ companies that you want to target. Or maybe that's the wrong way to go about it, but where do you start? For someone listening who's wondering, all right, where do I start if I'm not cold calling?
Well, look, we can just take it back to just sales, right? In general, right? You start with your customers, right? So if you don't have a business, if you don't have customers, right? So you talk to your customers. What do they like about you? What do they don't like about you? You want to have that interaction with the customers. And then you want to ask them for referrals. You want it to be a referral-based system because that is going to shorten your sales cycle, right? And it's also going to help you have a customer service mindset too, right? Because if, for example, if one of your customers isn't willing to recommend you, maybe they're not satisfied. Maybe you got to do a little bit more customer service with them, right? And once you do that, then all of a sudden they'll recommend you, right? So it's that, right? And now on social media, just go on and put out content. You'll meet people, and if I never sell what we're doing. I mean, I'll announce if we're doing something, but I don't sell it, right? But if somebody wants strategy and they know me, they're going to talk to me. If somebody wants analysis, they're going to talk to me. If somebody wants consulting, they're going to talk to me. I'm not on LinkedIn to get that business. I'm getting the business from somewhere else. So it's if it comes in, great. It's not, I don't depend on it, right?
Right.
One of the problems you see with a lot of people on LinkedIn right now is they're trying to build businesses off of LinkedIn, right? So they're trying, you see a lot of people with training and coaching and just specifically to how to do LinkedIn, right?
Oh, right. Yeah.
Which is a very dangerous cliff, because even if you're successful, LinkedIn can shut that down in a second.
Right. So if you're building, right. So you're talking about coaches, right? Yeah. Cause I've built, 100% of my clients at this point actually come from LinkedIn, and it's all inbound. And it's from videos, content, et cetera. Now I'm branching out and I'm doing other things for that very reason. If LinkedIn shuts down or they change the algorithm, like Facebook has done 10 times, What
you're doing is different, right? So you're doing actual coaching, right? I'm talking about the people that are saying, this is how you do LinkedIn. This is the way to do LinkedIn. Look, video is new, right? It's not even a year old. So nobody knows how to do LinkedIn video, not even LinkedIn.
Right. No, right? That's absolutely true. Yeah.
So, there isn't a way to do it, right?
No, absolutely.
You just put out content.
So you're a youngin' in Columbus, Ohio, and you feel trapped, right?
Right. Sure.
You decided at a young age to escape, and you did, and you went to LA and you escaped. There's a lot of people who so you started chasing freedom at 18, maybe younger than 18. You went out and did it right out of school.
Right.
There are people who don't do that because they don't have the courage to differ from what their parents think or tell them to think.
Sure.
So they get to 40 or 50, and then they come to me and they're like, I'm 50 years old and I've hated my life because I'm living the life that was plotted for me when I was 5. Yeah. I used to say 18, and now there's kindergartens that shut down their theater programs because they're not college ready enough. So,
and I understand, because it's highly competitive.
No. Yeah.
I wouldn't tutor I would have people, the parents, it was highly competitive in LA, and the parents would go, I need you to tutor my kid. And I go, what grade? And they go, kindergarten. I go, we're not doing that. So, because I would use the RAT4 test. I would use the RAT4 test to screen the kids. I would, 3rd grade was the lowest I would do. So
interesting.
Yeah.
And it's interesting.
So,
I want to do a whole nother show with you about tutoring kids who have ADHD. Because there's a great book by Dr. Peter Gray called Free to Learn, and he talks about the vast majority. Listen, there are some people, and I'm not a doctor, who need meds. They're clinically depressed. There's certain things. But Dr. Gray writes that the majority of kids who are on meds from ADHD, it's because they can't sit still at school. Whereas if you change the environment, and you've dealt with this, they'd be fine. But the initial thing is, he spoke out in class, give him some drugs.
Well, not only is he dead on, I was in the group of people just behind when they started the drugs, right? So I was considered a precocious kid. I was considered talented. I was considered, and I tested well, and so they realized that they had to do different things with me. That stopped a couple years after I graduated high school, 81. And exactly that, they started to say, let's drug up these kids. And a lot of them were put on Ritalin, right? And a lot of them became heroin addicts.
Interesting.
Years later. So now I will say this, I self-medicated my ADHD quite a bit with coffee for a long period of time, because uppers have opposite effects, downers it's different, right? So I could drink a lot of coffee and go right to sleep, right?
Interesting.
And then performance helped me kind of have a healthy outlet for it.
Yeah. And again, listen, there are some people who need certain things, but Dr. Gray talks about the majority are, Thomas Edison, right? He was told he had an addled brain before they had diagnosed ADHD. So his mom said, screw you, took him out, homeschooled him. And his addled brain was his superpower, right? Because he has 1,000 different patents. So he went from one thing to one thing.
And I'll tell you, look, I was willing to do drugs if I had to, if I couldn't do it but I'd been doing therapy because of the nephew stuff for such a long time, having a positive experience with it, that I did cognitive therapy. And what I learned was that really all I had to do was learn the language of the ADHD person, right? So they are a linear thinker and they need to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. And they need to do it in order and they need a system. Whereas I'm like, let's just get to Z because that's the end of the game. So let's get there. These other letters are very nice. And the example I would always give people was this, is that half, the glass half full, half empty, right? They say if you're a pessimist if you think it's half empty and an optimist if you think it's full. Yeah. That's not how my mind works. How my mind works is, are you an idiot even propositioning that question? That's a glass with water in it. You cannot deduct anything from that. What's wrong with you? Why are you asking me that question? And that it's so painful because it's such a fact-based thing. It's so painful that when you come out with it, it almost comes off as antisocial, but you're just like, look, I can't take one more of these small chat conversations. I'm going to go nuts. So I got to release it. And I was fortunate enough to be able to release it in a humorous way. And people, as many of my ex-girlfriends would say, I don't know if you're kidding or if you're serious. And it was true.
I've gotten that from time to time. So you left, you escaped, you went on your path to freedom at an early age. Yeah. You've pivoted in industries when you saw the coming storm coming, you changed, you pivoted, you reinvented yourself, recalibrated from from Ohio to LA to Philly to LA to Hawaii to Saudi Arabia to,
The witness protection has been very good for me.
Yeah. What would you tell, given that you have been on a path to freedom since you were young? Right. What would you tell someone listening who does not feel fully free, does not feel fulfilled, who wants to start but is scared?
Well, first of all, I would say, look, you're in the majority, right? So I'm an outlier. I'm not a normal case, right? But it's all baby steps, right? It's all getting out of your comfort zone, right? So like if you find, I find people to be creatures of habit, right? So if they haven't been to the next state, just going to the next state is a great step in the right direction, right? Because you can have that experience, right? And you can come back and you can say, oh wow, that's a different state. That's a different experience, right? I was fortunate. I love traveling. And so it was easy for me. But I will say this, there's that. And then also everybody thinks that there's a magic number that if they have this magic number in their bank account, that's when they can do it, right? Right. And there isn't a magic number. I mean, I didn't look back at all when I had that $345. I knew I'd get a job. I knew I'd make money. I knew I wasn't going to starve. And even if I was homeless, there was a beach, and also too, I think, be grateful for what you got. I mean, if you're aware that you're trapped, be grateful for that. Because you can get untrapped, right? You can hire you to get untrapped, right? I feel sorry for the person that doesn't even know they're not trapped. Yeah. I mean, they don't think they're trapped. I mean, it's a sad thing.
Yeah. That is the biggest, I left my industry, came here, lived near the beach, and I'll talk to people and they'll say, oh gosh, you got out. I wish I could get out, but I can't. Why not? Oh, yeah. Well, my job's not too bad. I like Thursday afternoons. Yeah.
Also too, the thing that's interesting about that is once they've exposed that inner secret, even if it's been accidental, now it's not a secret anymore. And, they have the opportunity to change it. Now, if they don't change it, that doesn't mean that they're a bad person. But I remember all my friends would say, I'm going to come to California too. And I just need to save up $2,000. And I'd get excited. Oh, they're going to come. That's going to be great. And then they'd get their $2,000, and I'd say, well, when you come? And they go, I think I need 4.
Right.
Right. And you know what? Look, if you're not going to move and if you're not going to change, just own that.
Exactly.
Be the best person that's not going to move and not going to change. That in and of itself is going to make you happier. And
admit that. I talk about people who say they're too busy, and it's like, listen, that's a choice. Whether you admit it or not, everything's a choice. Yeah. And so anything you spend money on, if you buy a TV, but then say you can't get a gym membership because it's too much money, that's a choice, right?
Yeah.
And so the people who won't admit it, just admit you chose not to move to LA. Don't say that God prevented you from coming, or, well, my mom thought I was stupid, so it's my mom's fault. No, it's your choice. You chose not to do it. I get blamed as a coach for that. Well, I didn't. It's your fault. No, that was your choice. You didn't show up for the coaching program. That was your choice. It's not making a value judgment.
That's right. That's right.
And something interesting you said too about it, getting them to admit it, even if they do it, they don't mean to admit it. They do. It's like alcoholism, right? It's almost like, oh my gosh, now I'm terrified because I admitted I'm not happy with my lot in life, and so now that's all I'm thinking about. But I can't tell my wife because then it's real.
Well, that's right. I mean, go back to the cold calling thing, right? So the people that attacked me in the cold calling thing, their behavior is very much like an addict. It's don't take my drug away. This is my drug. I want to get on the phone. I want to make money, and don't take that away. And it's like, dude, nobody's saying that. That's not anywhere near what was said, but your head heard that. But that's exactly what happens, right? So change, look, change for most people and most businesses that I work with, change happens at a crisis point.
Yeah.
I mean, it takes a crisis usually for people to make the change.
Yeah.
No.
And it's sad, but it's true.
Well, it's only sad. Look, it's only sad if the person doesn't let that be a bottom and then rise above it. Everybody needs a bottom. You need a bottom to say, oh, wow, I got this far. Right. You got to deal with the cards that you're dealt. Right. So my parents were older, so they both have been dead for a long time. Right. I mean, it's been a long time. I'm 50, right? 55. I have friends, some of their parents are just dying now. Right. Yeah. And I forget people have parents. I just forget. I forget, and then when oh my God, but they didn't get dealt the cards I got dealt. But I wouldn't change anything with the cards I got dealt.
Yeah. Interesting.
So.
Well, on that note, Roger, it's been a pleasure. This has been fascinating. Thanks for being on the show.
Well, thank you. And I would end this with saying, again, we'll see what happens with the Unlearned Show ban. But again, a lot of courage on your part to take the risk to have me on as a guest.
Yes. They are restarting the show up this Friday. So I will be sure to let Jake and Katie and Chantel and Sunny and them all know, Lacey, that they're missing out.
That's right. And for those that don't know how it got started, we should give that story real quick and we'll end with that, right? Yeah. So I said that Chantel was the best guest, right? Because she made them cry, right? And so I said, how come you don't have all the other hosts on as guests? I would like to get to know them too. I want to know the hosts, right? And she said, somebody canceled. And so somebody had to do it. So I said I'd do it. And I said, well, great, get me on as a guest and I'll cancel. And then that way I'll be able to hear one of the other interviews. Right. And she's so nice. She told them that. And then they said, no, we're not booking him because then he's going to cancel and one of us is going to have to do the show.
That's too funny. Yeah. Well, if the Unlearned Show is listening right now, end the ban on Roger. You won't regret it.
Well, thanks a lot, man.
All right. Thanks so much, Roger. And it's been a pleasure.